Right, it's 6 o'clock. So we've got everyone. Shall we proceed, everyone? So welcome to Place Scrutiny. So I'm just checking Kirsty's looking at me. Kirsty, we're okay to proceed, aren't we? Fantastic. So welcome to Place Scrutiny members. I hope you're all keeping safe, well, alert, whatever the slogan is. Yep, welcome to Place Board, the best board in Calderdale. Dealing with the agenda, subs. We don't have any subs today. Moving forward on to item number 2, members' interests. Does any member have an interest to declare? Councillor Young.
6, town deals and future high street funding. I'm a member of Topwood Development Board, so I don't know if I have to declare an interest in that.
I think that's a good idea, Councillor Young, and I'll also declare an interest there. I'm a member of the Brighouse Town Board as well.
I've got a declaration. Hello.
So who's that?
Pete. George.
Pete. Yeah, Pete, you sound different.
I've got 3 pints of glyphosate in my shed.
Right. What's your interest, Pete?
That's
Sell
it.
it on the black market.
All right. Oh, okay. Okay.
It's Councillor Benton told us he was a drink, maybe we could offer him.
So what was that, Councillor Fenton Glynn?
At a council meeting, Councillor Benton once told us glyphosate was safe to drink, so perhaps
Right.
I'm on my way up.
Councillor
Right,
Robinson,
Councillor Smith, yeah.
just likewise on the Sowerby Bridge Town Board.
Fantastic. Right, I think that's everything. If there's any other interest, you can also declare it within the meeting as well. Item number 3, admission of the public. The public are here. They're live on YouTube, so keep it PG, councillors. Right, onto the also minutes. The minutes are not ready. They haven't been completed yet. However, the minutes were for the call-in meeting, and I think it's safe to say that the call-in is not necessary. The content's not necessary for this meeting, so I'm satisfied with that. So the minutes will be pushed to the next meeting. Right, item number 4, the petition. Kirsty, can we bring in Miss Hardy and Miss Hughes, please?
Hello.
Hello. Can I call you Anne, or would you prefer Miss Hardy? Or
Oh, Anne's good.
Anne, perfect. Right. Hi, Anne.
Hello.
Do we have Charlotte as well?
Yes, she's just been promoted now.
Perfect. Thank you. Whilst Charlotte's being promoted, I'll just proceed with the usual blurb. So Anne, this obviously welcome to your first ever. I suspect it's your first place scrutiny board. It's the best in Calderdale. That's pursuant to me. It's not Calderdale Council policy that. So what we're going to do is place board. It's what we can. Oh, hello Charlotte, by the way.
Apologies, I disappeared.
No, it's okay. Place board, what we can do, it's not a decision-making body. So what we can do is we can make recommendations. We can make recommendations to cabinet, to officers, to try and get something done. However, we can't actually make a decision on this. So we can't say, let's put boards in any pool. That's not within our powers, but nonetheless, we can refer it upstairs if you like. So that's what we can do. What I'm going to do, Charlotte and Anne, if you would like to, I think you prepared some notes to present to us. If you'd like to present to us your thoughts on the petition, and then what I like to do is I'll bring in officers for their comments as well, and then we'll ask you some questions, and hopefully we can have a discussion and come to some recommendations if that's okay.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So over to you, Anne and Charlotte.
Who would you like to go first? I've got a statement and then we've both got some questions.
Yeah, in that case, Anne, would you like to go first, and then you could delegate it amongst yourself? That's fine.
certainly. So I'm Anne Hardy. I'm working with Charlotte Hughes, who's Halifax Synchro's head coach, and we're campaigning for a like-for-like replacement of the current Halifax swimming pool facilities in the planned new Halifax Leisure Centre. Specifically, this is the 3 diving boards. So that is a 5-metre platform, a 3-metre springboard, and a 1-metre springboard, which need a minimum water depth of 3.7 metres or preferred 3.8 metres. And so the deep water diving pit is not just for diving, but it's also used by synchro club, sub-aqua and water polo sports. The synchro, the Swim England minimum requirements, water depth are 2 metre minimum, but 3 metre recommended, and that's what's required for a competition standard pool, which we have at the moment. So a pool that has the facilities for diving and synchronised swimming was one of the key themes that emerged from the council feedback exercise for the Halifax Leisure Centre project that ran from June to August 2019. However, Calderdale Council's latest design proposals for the new Halifax Leisure Centre at North Bridge do not include diving boards and do not include an indication of pool depth. Sorry. Also, the council has said that the new pool should meet the needs of all users. The latest design does not meet the needs of all users, specifically diving, synchro and sub-aqua. While the project team manager, Janet Whitlow, has assured me, this was at the drop-in session, that no decisions have been made about the final designs, I have serious concerns about the omission of diving boards and deep water in the latest design proposals. If diving boards and deep water are not in the design plans, then these facilities will not be included in the new leisure centre. Councillor Scullion informed me via email that our initial designs showing the architects' early ideas of what they could do for the amount of money we think we could reasonably borrow and pay back. This shows that some thinking has already been done around costings. The further down the line we get with design and planning, the more difficult and costly it will be to amend the design and add in diving boards and diving pit. By failing to include diving boards and deep water in the current designs, the council has effectively disregarded the 2019 feedback exercise. How can stakeholders have confidence that the council will not do the same again after the 2020 consultation exercise? More assurance is required than simply stating that nothing has been ruled out. Replicating the existing facilities should have been the start point for the new leisure centre plan. Diving facilities and deep water must be included in all future iterations of the designs. The petition shows strong support for diving boards and deep water to be included in the planned new pool. The aquatic sports facilities in the new Halifax Leisure Centre should be a like-for-like replacement at minimum, and certainly not a reduction from the current provision. Diving boards and deep water provision should be maintained for the benefit of the Calderdale community, both current and future. I will conclude with a section from the letter my 9-year-old daughter submitted to the consultation. And she said in her letter, diving, synchro and other water-based activities and sports mean a great deal to me, and a Halifax without these facilities would seem to me as a great loss of a key element of the town. I could not put this better myself. Diving boards and deep water aquatic sport facilities are few and far between. They are part of what makes Halifax on Calderdale distinctive. Please celebrate this and continue to provide and support diving and deep water facilities in Calderdale, either at the current Halifax swimming pool or in the new Halifax Leisure Centre. That concludes my statement, and I do have some questions also. Thank you.
Really well done, Anne. I know it's not easy, especially when it's an online meeting.
Thank you.
Do you want to ask your questions?
Yes, yeah.
With Charlotte, yeah.
Would Charlotte like a go, or shall I ask mine first?
I can go if you'd like.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Okay, so my name's Charlotte. I'm the head coach of Halifax Synchro Club. I'm also a diving instructor. So Halifax Synchro have been at Halifax Pool for 20 years. Next year, they've been running, and a very successful club we are. We are national champions several years running. So we are a major stakeholder. We bring in financially an awful lot. I think we've worked it out around about 4,500 a month. So Halifax Synchro hasn't really been consulted about the specifics of the planned new pool. Janet Whitlow told Anne Hardy that she was under the impression that the clubs had been consulted. We would like to know whether the board can recommend the clubs and coaches are consulted directly, not via management, who don't seem very supportive. Would you like me to carry on with the next question?
Yeah, I think probably it's worth getting all of your questions now.
Okay.
And then officers will come in and they can respond to the questions, and then we'll all have a discussion afterwards, if that's okay.
Okay, well, I'll carry on. I've heard firsthand from my management that they will be supporting the inclusion of diving boards in the new swimming pool due to financial restraints. The management have said that they already have in mind a type of pool they would like to use and depth they want. This will not accommodate diving at all, and it is not deep enough for a competition pool for synchro. Halifax Synchros produce world-class athletes. Isabel Davis currently swims with us, and she won a silver medal at the Combo Cup team event of the FINA World Series this year in March in Paris. Can the board recommend that the council celebrate the success of Halifax Synchro and support it by maintaining the facilities they require? The next question is, having a competitive pool like the existing Halifax pool brings in revenue. The Yorkshire Synchro Board, the North East Synchro Board currently hire the pool for competitions, grading, assessment days and development camps. Can the board recommend that this be factored into the planning for the new Halifax Leisure Centre to obviously enable it to continue? Halifax Synchro Club is inclusive. We have girls and boys of all ages and a masters team. Can the board recommend to the council that allowing the club to continue with the facilities it needs support to help support healthy living and positive mental health to young and old alike? The new pool plans show a cafe. A cafe takes up significant space in the planning of Halifax Leisure Centre. Cafes have failed at Halifax Swimming Pool and Northbridge. Also, there are many food retail outlets nearby that are available. So space is limited, and sports facilities and the pool specifications should be prioritised. Can the board recommend to the council that the space could be used more wisely, creating a better training space for future athletes and existing athletes? The pool is valued by its users. The Synchro Club asked its members to write a personal impact statement, and these were submitted as part of the consultation that took place earlier this year. Some of our members come from Skipton, Ilkley and Todmorden to train with our club. Can the board recommend that these are read and shown as a true connection and impact the sport of synchro has with Calderdale and the wider community?
Charlotte, I think, sorry to interrupt. I think that there's quite a few questions. Shall we give officers a chance to respond now?
Yeah.
And then we could bring you back in to ask how many questions have you got left? Have you got quite a few?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it's good time then. I'll bring officers in at the moment, just whilst
Okay.
we've got those questions, and then
That's
we'll
fine.
come back to you. That's okay, Charlotte. Officers and councillors, Councillor Scullion and Councillor Press, would you like to respond to the meeting and respond to those questions, or anything else you'd like to raise?
Hi, shall I go first? Sarah Richardson. I'm the Assistant Director for Customer Services for Calderdale Council. So just a few things really that I'd like to say in response to those really passionate submissions by both Anne and Charlotte, and I really welcome that, and would like to just confirm that we really do celebrate the success of what you're able to do with the synchro teams and the diving teams there. We know you're doing a great job. But just to just sort of put things in some sort of context as to where we are now with the design of the new centre. So the project's currently at concept design stage, and the design is at high level, starting to hone the uses of space, and a large amount of work is being carried out on the business case, looking at potential uses and activities within the outlined space. Prior to the COVID lockdown, the project was moving into the developed design stage, and during this stage, consultation work takes place, and we'd started those consultations, but unfortunately, we had to stop them because of the COVID lockdown. Now, that consultation will be restarted before any further work takes place on the design, the developed design, and that'll be with the public, specific user groups like yourselves and stakeholders. And that consultation feeds further into assisting the design to develop with the costings and income generation potential considered, and develop to provide a more refined design with greater detail on the potential cost and business case. Once the project board has approved this stage, it would then move to planning, with final stage of this scope work being the technical design stage. Both diving facilities and a movable floor have been costed, but they were identified as not core facilities, but as options for further investigation and developed for decision to be made whether to include at a later development stage of the project. There's been to date no decision on not including them, as the petition suggests. And there are also other facilities in that same category, including squash courts and an outdoor five-a-side pitch. So what we've done is put together a core offer with costings, and then identified additional things that members might want to put in place of other things that are in there as core offers. But you'll appreciate there's a funding envelope that this needs to be provided within. And so we're not making any decisions. We're saying this is a core offer, these are the other things that are available, and this is the cost. We'll do consultation to find out what the public and stakeholders feel they would like from their facility. And ultimately, it will be a decision for the board to make and for members to make as to what goes in there, based on the business case that officers will provide. That's me done, George.
Yeah, Councillor, thank you, Sarah. Councillor Scullion.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Anne and Charlotte. And I have been lobbied by many of your members and users as well. And I think one of your parents actually was at school with my daughter, who, although she lives in London, she lobbies me hard herself, actually, in terms of the swimming pool, particularly the synchronised swimming. I wanted to just add a bit of context for committee members, as well as trying to sort of set the scene for the two people who are here to address the committee. And I would emphasize what Sarah had already said, which is basically it's not taking shape at the moment. We've got a kind of general outline plan. And I do take Anne's point that, you know, if these things aren't in at the beginning, there is a danger that they won't be in at the end. And I do hear that point. I do understand it. But it's very much at this stage, it was an Aunt Sally, as they call it, for lobbing things out, saying, no, these things, exactly as Charlotte said, maybe a cafe isn't the right thing. Maybe more things could be in if the cafe wasn't there. But we're not really at the stage of having had that consultation, having had the detailed conversation with sports clubs and users. I'm interested to hear what you say about the management. I certainly didn't know that they had very fixed ideas, but maybe they're hearing things about the financial situation. Let me go on to talk about two of the things that I think are important for context. The first is that you will be aware that the swimming baths, as they stand at the moment, there currently is an application to have that building listed. And that means that Heritage England are asked whether the building should remain exactly as it is. There are two aspects to the listing. One is to keep the building completely as it is, internally and externally. And the other aspect to the listing is to list the mural as an important work of art that should be saved. Now that's clearly separate. That's being done by, particularly by campaigners in London. And clearly that would have an impact. I'm not sure what kind of impact it would have in terms of what we're planning, in terms of putting a swimming pool and the leisure centre refurbished and together. So those are the plans that are on the stocks, but clearly there's a lot of other things that are happening at the moment. The second thing is the budget, and I must basically offer a word of warning here. This was actually a swimming pool and leisure centre, new sports facilities, refurbished and new, which basically were meant to be the pride of Halifax and Calderdale as a whole. Actually, I actually think that people, I would agree with Anne and Charlotte, people do actually deserve a decent set of facilities and a really good building. Like, that's what I want to see. But we were funding this primarily ourselves with very small amount of grant funding. So unlike the Peace Hall and various other things where we got external funding, large amounts of external funding, at the moment, we would have to borrow the money in order to do these works and then pay it back over a number of years. So it's all our own money. So clearly money is very tight. The other bit of context really relates to COVID-19, in that the council has basically seen no income really from the major income streams that it has for some time. And currently we are expecting to be about £15 million down this year on our funding. And at the moment, not clear unless central government comes in how we're actually going to replace that monies. So the caveat is that I don't know at this moment precisely when we will restart the consultation, or indeed when we might have a timetable for when we might have new facilities. There are so many unknowns at the moment. However, it is important to lobby early, and I think that's, I hear what both Charlotte and Anne said. If I come back to some of the things that people are saying, yes, the design that was being consulted on, I think, was very bland, was very basic. Here are the basic things. Are there other things that you want? Does this look right given the constraints, etc.? I know that the consultants we employed to do this were looking at some of the newer pools that have been built by other local authorities, including Lancaster, I think was one, and Clissold was another, Clissold Park was another. So looking at what kind of recent facilities have been built in other areas. And I'm interested to hear more in terms of what kind of things they've done, what kind of opportunities they have. I think that's all I can say. I am also being lobbied, I have to say, about a number of the other facilities on the dry side in terms of what people want to see. So I think it is important, and thank you for bringing these things forward, in terms of what are all the things that people want to see. If money was a no object, actually, there are lots and lots of things that we would all like to see. Some of those things that will come out during the consultation won't go ahead. Some of them will. And let's hope actually we get to funding a more settled position for local government finance, and indeed for this project, where some of these other things are already sorted and we can look forward and we can plan and work together. We have already started detailed consultation, or as detailed as it is at the moment, with local disability groups in terms of improving access in different ways, so having those early conversations. So some of the things that people have asked about really have got to wait until we get onto the consultation. And at the moment, I'm really sorry, I can't actually give a date for when we can restart that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Press, would you like to come in? Could I also ask for, just at this point, whilst you're on, for clarification of this listed building status? I'm just quite interested in that point. Thank you.
I understand that it is the 20th Century Society who are particularly interested in 20th century buildings, of course, who do very interesting work and often interested in the buildings that nobody else loves, but increasingly are becoming important in our local landscape. There was a big feature in the Halifax Courier recently about the mural. Particularly, it's the mural that has attracted people's attention. In the upgraded version of Pevsner, the architectural guide, the mural actually does get quite a lot of attention. The designer, painter was a Mr. Barden, who has become known for some of the 20th century work that he's done, murals and so on elsewhere. And I think some of the work is deemed to be close to what has happened in the Midland Hotel in Morecambe, which has similar sort of tiled murals, glazed tiled murals that they have restored. And one of the questions is, if the swimming pool does close, as it is at the moment, and those of you who use it regularly will know that it does have some deficiencies as a building and as a pool, that saving the mural and trying to reinstate it in a new area would actually be something that we would look to do. Some of the tiles are in poor condition, some of them dropped off and some of them have been deglazed. But we are in the hands of English Heritage. The application has been made and English Heritage will, in due course, I expect in some months' time, decide whether they want to list the whole building or whether they merely wish to list the mural or whether they do not wish to list any of it. But we wait at their pleasure.
Thank you, Councillor Swing. Councillor Press.
I think it's pretty much all been said, really. Just that obviously if the whole building were to be listed, then to some extent that would be something else which would be a challenge. But basically, as Councillor Scullion said, we were meeting regularly and we were starting to progress the Leisure Centre Project Board. And we'd only really just got going with that when the COVID-19 crisis occurred. So for now, it's all up in the air, really. I think that's really all I want to say, because Sarah and Jane have outlined it all pretty thoroughly.
Perfect. Thank you, Councillor Press. Members, do you want to put in the chat box if you want to come in, ask a question? I think Roisin, you put your hand up. So I'll let sorry, Councillor Kavanagh, you put your hand up. I'll let you come in at this point. If I could ask members to put in the chat box, though, because it's easier to monitor. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. I just wanted to make a comment, which is about the importance of having facilities for young people, facilities that, enable people to get to a professional level in something. I remember when they had the Winter Olympics on, that they could trace a certain amount of people in the ski and snowboard team back to one town, and I don't know which it was, whether it was Sheffield or it was somewhere that actually had the facilities to train, that generated, a sizable amount of the Olympic team. And I just think having facilities that are of a certain standard are amazing for young people who live in that area, and it means that they're accessible, so you don't have to travel outside of Calderdale to get to a new facility. So I totally respect and think it's really important for Calderdale that we keep it. I think on the other side is around the fact that I think what the officers in Councillor Scullion and Press have said is that we're only at consultation stage and that no decisions have been made, and that within that we've also got to consider the kind of larger budgetary constraints that we're in, particularly because of COVID. But just to say that I think it is totally, where is, just as a question, where is the nearest diving place outside of Calderdale? Can Anne or Charlotte answer that?
Leeds.
Yes, so that's a huge, if you were coming from Todmorden to Leeds, it's undoable for lots of young people, particularly if you're from a background where your parents can't drive you or afford the transport. I'll leave it there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. I'll bring in, so Councillor Young, then Councillor Caffrey, and then Councillor Fenton Glynn raises his hand. So I'll bring in that order. So it's just Councillor Young.
I think we should note the petition, but I think we, as a board, should recommend that that diving boards and deep water should be included in the proposed new pool, because I think it's important that, you know, this club's been going for a number of years, very successful, good income for the council, and I think if we put a replacement pool in, which was not as good as existing one, would be a backward step. So I'd like to put that down as a recommendation, please, Chair.
That's very, I think, yeah, it's an interesting point. Do we have any seconders for that recommendation? I don't mind seconding it, Councillor Young, but I would like a bit more detail fleshed out, if that's okay.
I'm just slightly confused if we can put forward a recommendation when we're still at the consultation phase. Can someone clarify that?
We can do. Ultimately, we can recommend anything we want to Cabinet, and it's for Cabinet to consider. I mean, Councillor Young, obviously, you put a proposal on the table. I totally agree. It's a backward step. So I'll
make a suggestion.
Yeah, go on, Councillor Fenton-Glynn.
So, what I was putting my hand up to do was sort of along these lines. I think I recognise we're at the consultations phase, and actually I recognise that we're getting quite positive noises from Councillor Scullion and the officers, and you know, it's important we listen. Can I ask Mike, is it possible if we as a board could send a few lines to the consultation, so make a submission on behalf of the Place Scrutiny Board saying, you know, following quite strong public feeling and a lot of evidence that it would be useful for both being and kind of for bringing people into the town. The Scrutiny Board recommends that if finances are available, that within the new building, deep water pool and diving boards are included.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure that officers and Cabinet would consider seriously any conclusions that the Scrutiny Board reached. You know, I'm sure Councillor Scullion or Sarah will comment, but if you reach some conclusions and there was a consultation exercise going on, I'm sure that those views would form part of that.
Right. So we've got a proposal on the table, Councillor Young. What we'll do, I think we'll just finish off the questions that are being raised just first. I think that makes sense. So Councillor Young, we're just going to hang fire on that at the moment. Is that okay? Let's just finish off some questions. Good, right. So Councillor Caffrey, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was slightly surprised to hear that this building was being listed or applied to be listed. Because looking at it, I would have thought it was fit for demolition rather than listing. But
this is stunning.
If it's a London campaign, well, that doesn't really surprise me. No, so no. Personally, I think it'd be a travesty if these facilities weren't included. I mean, I'm assuming this is a competition-sized pool, is it? The 50 metres, 25 metres, whatever. Is that right?
It's a 25-metre pool, but it is a competition pool.
So it's 50 metres long and 20, yeah, the usual thing. So I think it'd be a travesty not to include things. I mean, try and encourage people to do sport. I mean, I don't know what difference in cost is, but I mean, in terms of priorities, I would have thought a diving pool was more important than a cafe. And I'm also concerned that in the eyes of the public, what we're doing here is we're encouraging people to come into town by spending money on other things, but we seem reluctant to spend it on the people of the town themselves. We spend massive amounts of money on capital projects for ourselves, for offices and things like that. And it sends out the wrong message to people that we're prepared to spend vast amounts of money on projects for us, but when it's for the public, there seems to be some problem with budgets, which isn't normally a problem for this sort of thing. So I just think they're travesty not to do it. I understand what both of these ladies are saying. I quite agree with every word of it. I think we should really support what they're doing and make sure that this is written in. My main concern, this drops off the radar. So, ladies, if you make sure you keep raising it whenever you can to make sure it does stay on the radar and the council does look at it. Thanks, George.
Thank you, Councillor Caffrey. I don't know if there was a question in there. If
no, it's not a question, it was just a statement.
Right, just a statement. Councillor Fenton Glynn.
So I was going to make the proposal that I kind of made off the back of Dave's.
Right, sure. Councillor Smith.
Yeah,
Audrey Smith, then Councillor Brian Smith.
I'd just like to say that I think the comments Roisin said are true. It's about having a high quality provision brings people in. What do you, Anne and Charlotte, think of the provision that we've currently got? If it was a matter of keeping what we've got with the pool there, would that be better than having a new provision? And I'd also like you to consider how that fits in with what the majority of the people in Calderdale would think. You know.
Would you like me to go, Anne?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so at the moment, the pool that we have got is fantastic. So it's a T-shaped pool. So it lends itself to so many different activities that can happen all at the same time. So to give you a bit of a context, I can run my synchro club in the diving pit, or I can run my diving lessons in the diving pit, whilst the members of the public can be doing lane swimming, or the swimming club can be doing lane swimming. And it can be changed around the other way. So the shallow end can be used for swimming lessons, and the deep end can be used for diving and synchro. So it's a very versatile pool. Obviously with the diving boards, it's got a 1 metre spring, a 3 metre spring, and a 5 metre platform. It's used by the public at the weekend. There's nowhere in the area where you can use diving boards. I think there's only Barnsley Metrodome which let you use them, but obviously that's quite a fair way away. But for us to have the deep water, it just means that it's obviously safe for our swimmers. If we were to have a pool that was less than 2 metres deep, it would not be safe. We'd see so many accidents and children hitting their heads, and it wouldn't be fit for purpose. So to go backwards to have what I call kind of a pool that's it's not utilised by the sports clubs that we've got would be a travesty.
So you would rather keep the facilities we've got rather than have something that doesn't have those?
Yes, personally.
And how does that compare to the wider consultation with other groups? I don't know, does Jane know, or Sarah, in terms of the wider population? How do they feel? Is it a positive step to have a new swimming pool in theory, or would they rather keep the same one with the same facilities?
Chair, that's the whole point of having a consultation,
Exactly.
is to have those discussions, and we'd only just started when COVID-19 came along, so I can't answer that question yet.
Could I just add about the pool?
Mm-hmm.
From my point of view, the Halifax swimming pool is amazing. As Charlotte said, it has facilities, it's flexible, it's got diving boards, it's got the diving pit. What's lacking is the sort of maintenance. Money, not enough money is being spent on it to keep the roof in good shape, keep the changing rooms nice and looking nicer, and sort of feeling more clean. So I think if people think about the pool, they might be put off by those aspects. But if the core bit of the pool, diving boards, diving pit, that is just such an amazing facility, and it's already there. So what could the money from what's been earmarked for the new building, could that just not be spent on refurbishing the existing building, and it's got a beautiful mural. It's fantastic. I think it's a great facility.
Can I just say at this point, I think it's wonderful to see that you're actually very passionate about the sports centre. I think it's absolutely amazing to see. Councillor Press, you want to come in to respond to that? Sorry, Councillor Press, you're on mute. I'll then bring in Councillor Brian Smith.
Oh, thank you. I was wondering, is there no other funding?
I wanted to come in. Sorry, I wanted to come in on the issue of the current swimming pool. I just thought Sarah might just have some more information on the problems, the problems that we're having and have been having for an awfully long time in terms of maintenance and the cost of maintenance, because I'm not sure that keeping it is actually an option. Do you want to come in on that, Sarah?
I think certainly the position that we are in with the existing swimming pool is that it does require a huge amount of investment in order to bring it up to a standard where it would be fit for purpose. We've spent significant amounts of money over the last few years patching it up so it can limp along and provide the services that residents want. But we're at a stage now with it where really it's beyond those sticking plasters. It would need significant investment, and that's why we're looking at providing 2 facilities in one space, which would then enable us as a council to look at the efficiency of delivering like that. There would be a reduction in management, for example, and running costs. So that's part of our thinking around why we would put the 2 facilities in one space. Absolutely hear what Anne and Charlotte are saying, and as you said, Chair, it's wonderful to hear people so passionate about one of the facilities that we provide. But anybody who's been into Halifax pool recently could not miss the fact that it is in a poor state. It's certainly not. It's not shining as an example of one of our facilities at the moment. And what we're looking for is an opportunity to provide that for the people of Halifax with the proposal that we've got for the new centre. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. I'm going to bring Councillor Brian Smith, and then I'm going to talk with Councillor Young to try and amend his proposal before I second his.
Thank you, Chair. My question is really, are there no alternative funding streams? I seem to recall when this first came, which was many years ago, to build a swimming pool at the leisure centre. And I think it was brought forward by Ian Gray and Councillor Collins, but it was a joint venture with, I think it was Sport England, but I'm not just sure. But it was like a funding bid for swimming facilities. So I'm just wondering if Sarah can remember that.
Yeah, Sarah, would you like to respond?
I don't remember that, I'm afraid, Councillor Smith. It might have been before my time. But the proposal that we're putting forward now does include some funding from Sport England. They have indicated that they would be looking favourably at providing some funding, but there would be the majority of the funding that would be needed will be provided from borrowing by the council, and as Councillor Scullion said, then looking at the financial picture for repaying that.
Did they give a percentage of that, of what funding they will be prepared to put forward?
I'm not, off the top of my head, I don't know what it would be as a percentage, Councillor Smith, but I can certainly find that out for you.
Okay, thank you. Right,
Councillor Holdsworth, I am going to bring you in a minute. I'm just going to make I'm just going to propose something, and hopefully it's in line with what Councillor Young proposed, so he'll be interested in seconding what I'm about to say. I've been jotting some things down, and I've been intrigued by the passion. I think it's absolutely super. This is a consultation, however, we're being consulted, you know, so there's nothing wrong with us recommending something to Cabinet for consideration. That's what consultation is. Regarding the funding element, funding sources can always be found, and we also have prudential borrowing, which the council uses to cover capital projects. So I don't see why this project is not within the remit of prudential borrowing. Anyway, on to my recommendation. We're always talking about we want to be the best borough in the north. So we should have the best facilities in the north. That's my opinion. And I'd like to recommend to Cabinet and officers that Halifax's sports centre should be seen as an opportunity to put Calderdale on the fitness map, to note the passion of the sports teams that use the current swimming pool, acknowledge that we must bring the community with us in our ambition to have the best fitness facility in the north, and to incorporate diving boards and deep water facilities into the sports centre design to increase commercial opportunities and respond to the fitness community's wishes. That's my proposal. Councillor Young, I believe that's in line with what you were recommending. It's just a bit fleshed out. Would you be interested in seconding that? Right, yeah, Councillor Young is seconding that. So in that case, we've got a proposal on the table. I'm going to bring in Councillor Holdsworth as promised, and then a further discussion and amendments if required.
You're on mute, Councillor Holdsworth, sorry.
Sorry, you're still on mute, Councillor Holdsworth.
Okay, is that,
Fantastic.
oh, it's worked now. Okay, thank you. No, I was just going to say, I want to give my full support to the retention of diving facilities, whether they be in what I think is an iconic 20th century building, the current pool refurbished, or the new development. I think you need to remember that this country in 2016 in Rio produced gold medal divers, and in 2012, I think we all remember Tom Daley. And I looked into where else people could go to train. Manchester Aquatic Centre has a 5-metre board. The Metrodome in Barnsley definitely has a 3-metre board. Leeds Diving Club in Pudsey and the Shipley pool have 5-metre boards, but that's an awful long way for young people who are principally, I think, the people who start diving training young to travel to. And we should encourage sport in the borough. And I just want to say that I think it would be a shocking travesty to withdraw the excellent facilities that the people of Calderdale have enjoyed for such a long time in Halifax pool. I mean, I remember diving from the top board, and I wouldn't touch it now with a barge pole, but it was fantastic. And I was never very good at it, but it was brilliant. But some people have gone on to win absolutely lots of prizes, medals and competitions. And why should we want to disadvantage people in this borough, which in many ways doesn't have the greatest facilities on earth? And I thought we were supposed to be building them to help people really achieve their maximum potential. So I just wanted to say that, and thank you.
Fantastic, thank you, Councillor Holdsworth. Do we have any amendments to my proposal? No.
Oh,
no.
could I just say something? Would it be possible to include in there sort of the depth of the deep water, just so that, you know, there's sort of, it's quite clear? Because in my statement I mentioned that 3.7 meters is the minimum depth required for a 5-meter platform. So that's with 3.8 meters preferred. So ideally, just to be completely clear what deep water is, that's what ideally we'd be wanting, so that the pool could have a 5-meter platform.
Would that be a like for like?
It would, yes. Currently, the current pool is 12'6", which is approximately 3 meters 81 centimeters. So it would effectively be a like for like replacement, no deeper. Yeah.
So in consultation with Councillor Young, who has seconded my proposal, are you okay, Councillor Young, with including the terminology like for like replacement within that proposal? Yeah, he's put his hand up. Is that satisfactory, Anne?
That's super. Thank you very much,
Perfect.
everyone.
No problem. Councillor Taylor, you're waving.
Sorry, I'll come off mute. It just sounds like a report rather than a recommendation. Is there any way we can concise it to say exactly what we feel? Can we have a like for like what we have and add on the other bits? But when you read out the proposal that Councillor Young, was it seconded, it sounded a little bit like an essay, and that's not a criticism, that's merely an observation. If not, fine, carry on with it. I'll not vote against it. I just thought, keep it short. You know where I'm coming from.
You're speaking to a complex guy, Councillor Taylor. That's you know, I mean, the last paragraph, to incorporate diving boards and deep water facilities as a like-for-like replacement. I feel that that's pretty simple enough.
Yes.
The preceding paragraphs are just outlining, as a board, our expectation that we should be the best.
Leave it as is, George.
Perfect.
Councillor Robinson. Leave it as is. But I just thought it was a little bit long-winded. That was all.
That's okay. I'll take that as constructive criticism. So I'll move to the vote in that case. All those in favour, please show your hands. Right, if you just keep them up. So that's me, George, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Young, Councillor Smith, Councillor Caffrey, Councillor Audrey Smith, Councillor Holdsworth, Councillor Kavanagh, and Councillor Fenton Glynn. That's everyone. Unanimous. Fantastic. Thank you, and thank you, officers, and Councillor Scullion and Councillor Press. And I look forward to getting the best fitness facility in the UK. Let's go big. So thank you very much.
Can we have a councillor synchronised swimming team?
I don't think
I've always wanted to be a synchronised swimmer.
We have a
masters team.
We do have a masters team, which is really successful. We're national champions. Come and join us.
Okay.
I don't think you've got any Calderdale Tom Daly's in this chat. I don't think.
Hey.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you, Charlotte, as well.
Thank you very much for hearing us.
And
Thank you.
yes, likewise.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Right then, on to item number 5. Kirsty, could we bring in the officers and relevant cabinet members?
Just 1 second.
Thank you.
That should be everybody now, Councillor.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kirsty. So I think Andrew, is Andrew in here? Is he? I think Andrew's, yeah, Andrew, are you presenting to us today?
Yes, thanks, Chair. I'll just give a brief introduction, if I may, to the report. As members will know, a report was provided to Cabinet last year in July, which gave an overview of the current use of herbicides by the council, specifically glyphosate, and it provided information on the costs and relative efficiency of methods that were available to control weeds. This was because the use of glyphosate as a method of weed control had become, to say the least, quite contentious due to concerns about the potential impact on human health and the environment. The report to Cabinet explained what alternatives were available, and Cabinet resolved, as set out in the report, basically that A, we should cease the use of glyphosate completely within parks and verges, which is the soft landscape areas, through the adoption of alternatives. That costed plans should be developed to phase out the use of glyphosate for treatment of hard landscape areas over the next 1 to 2 years. that there should be exceptions for the treatment of invasive species such as Japanese knotweed and giant hogweed, and that we should engage with local groups and experts on herbicides and alternative treatments in order to inform good practice. So the report that's before the Scrutiny Board this evening sets out the progress that we've made towards these objectives, with Appendix 1 summarising the different approaches that can be taken on soft and hard landscaped areas, together with their operational and financial implications, and Appendix 2 showing how weeds might be managed in various green spaces scenarios. So really, in summary, we've stopped the use of glyphosate within all parks and gardens, and also on soft landscaping generally, including wildflower areas, plus on all highway verges. And the only exception to this is on use around safety surfacing, where manual removal is actually damaging the integrity of that surface. On the soft landscape areas, we're using what we'll call an integrated method of weed control, which is with wood chip as a weed suppressant on shrubberies, etc., and a combination of a couple of natural weed management treatments that are only suitable for soft landscapes and permeable surfaces. And we're using other mechanical measures such as strimming, hoeing, and hand edging of grass in particular high profile areas. We are still using glyphosate on the highway network, as currently there are no cost effective alternatives for treating and controlling weeds on such large areas. However, we have reduced the number of applications per year from 3 to 2, and we're looking at further reducing that in rural areas to just 1 application every 2 years. Essentially, there are 2 key challenges. The first is hard landscape areas, where, as I've said, we've not yet identified viable alternatives to glyphosate for these areas. And secondly, is simply the financial implications, which, if you look in the report, you will see are quite significant. Ballpark figures are that we may be talking up to £250,000 a year more on soft landscaping areas using the sort of integrated approach that I've referred to, and potentially another 500,000 on hard landscape areas. So that's all I wanted to say in way of an introduction and summary of the report, Chair. But I think Amanda Firth and Samantha Ward are also in attendance this evening. They're the experts on this rather than me, and I'm sure they'll be able to deal with any detailed questions that members may have. Thank you.
Yeah, over to Amanda and Samantha if you want to elaborate any further.
From my perspective, no, I think Andrew's covered really everything that we've got there. Obviously, if you want in any detailed questions, then Samantha's probably more of an expert than I am on this particular field. But as I say, at the moment there's no alternative really, other than what Andrew's actually explained.
Yeah, Samantha, have you got any further comments?
No, nothing further. No, I'm quite happy with the way Andrew's presented, and I agree with Amanda.
If I could remind members, if it's okay, I'm trying to keep one system for questioning. If you could just put your comments in the box, in the chat box, it's just much easier to log. So I'll bring in Councillor Fenton-Glynn and then Councillor Young.
Hiya. Firstly, thank you for this report. I've spoken about glyphosate, and one day I really hope to be able to pronounce it properly. The first thing I'd say, I mean, I certainly being where I am, I've really appreciated the number of extra wildflowers that we have. Child who has an obsession with dandelion. Obviously, that's quite useful for biodiversity, particularly allowing insects around, which then helps improve pollination for everyone. My question would be, I mean, I guess my understanding is that no council has quite cracked being able to stop using glyphosate entirely for some of the hard infrastructure. And I'm just wondering kind of what we're doing to work with other councils to kind of share best practice and make sure that we're kind of picking that up, and also kind of working with them to make sure that we can reduce use nationally, hopefully to none one day.
Yeah, I'll answer that. Oh, sorry.
Go on, no, go ahead.
No, we are working a cross section with other local authorities. We've already we're already a part of APSI, the APSI network, which helps us a great deal with sharing information across other local authorities, and we will continue to do that.
So what network?
APSI. It's the Association of Excellence. And I'm also a qualified Green Flag Award judge, and I have been for 13 years. So I've got a unique insight to what other authorities are actually doing, and they can share with us quite openly what they are doing. And I'm going to share with our department what I find out as well across each of the teams. Okay, thank you.
We've got Councillor Young next.
Thank you. As many members of the board would know, I've been totally against the use of weed killer for a number of years. I can remember the first meeting I had with Amanda and Mark Dempsey, who's now retired from the council, and I said how disgusting it was that we were using glyphosate. He said, it's better than the stuff we used before. And I said to you, what you mean Roundup? He said, yes. Well, I didn't know Roundup. No, what Roundup? What was it called, Amanda?
I'm not sure.
It was some stuff that got used by the councils but got banned because it was killing people basically. But so I think we should encourage Calderdale Council to cease the use of any weed killer. I know it's going to be difficult. There will be a cost to the council for this, because obviously you should read the report. A lot of this stuff, the alternative ways of doing it is not cost effective and very labour intensive. But at the end of the day, it's not a safe thing to use weed killer. I've got a cat climbing all over me now. It's not even mine. Go down.
Right. I'm going to bring in Councillor Press, and then I'll let an officer respond to Councillor Young's comments as well. Councillor Press.
Yeah, I think probably our officers will want to come back on this. But there's a couple of things. Please don't underestimate what Andrew is saying about the cost, the additional cost of the hard landscaping, because we are, I do have to say that we are, if we were in a difficult financial situation when we first discussed this a year ago, we are obviously, because of COVID-19, we are facing an extremely challenging financial situation, which is likely to involve all kinds of very, very unpalatable decisions. So, you know, I think there has to be some recognition, really, that we have gone an awfully long way towards not using, I can't say either, glyphosate. We have cut down radically, drastically, and the area which remains challenging is, as Andrew said, the hard landscaping, which I do know because I have been trying it myself outside my house, that weed killer without it just frankly doesn't work on hard surfaces. It's extremely difficult to get rid of weeds. People have to get, if people want us to go down this road more, then they're going to have to get used to more weeds, basically. And perhaps if the general public can get perhaps more amenable to that, then that would give us some kind of leeway and some kind of stretch room. but it actually isn't the case that we've been using stuff that's going to kill people. If that had been the case, then we would not have been using it for as long as we did. And I'm sure our officers will confirm that when we did use it, it was in line actually with EU regulations, and as far as we could ascertain, it was in line with safety regulations. So I wouldn't like anyone to think that we were, doing weed killer stuff, because we weren't, and we aren't in the instances in which we have to use it at the moment. So I'd like our officers to clarify that actually, because I think Councillor Young said something there which actually is not actually factually correct, even though I totally agree that it was our wish and remains our wish to phase it out totally. I think we said in certain instances, hogweed springs to mind. There were certain instances where, or was it knotweed, one of them, there are weeds which are impervious to anything but glyphosate and which actually are harmful to the environment. There were certain exceptions, and the hard landscaping was one of them. So finally, I just wanted to say, and I'd like our officers to come back, that if it is the case that the cost is prohibitive on the hard landscaping front, then we maybe have to look again at how we can phase this through over a longer period, taking into account the cost. But please, let's recognise that we have, I'm not sure what the percentage would be, that we must be somewhere like something like 70% along the road which the council wanted us to go down, and which we all agree is the road we should be going down. But it isn't as simple as saying we've got to do this. We actually have got immense financial challenges. So I'd appreciate it if the officers could come back.
Yeah, Councillor Press, I'll bring in an officer. And also, I think the nutshell here is, could an officer just respond and just say, if I spray glyphosate all over my lawn, will I die? I'd just like to know what the health implications are from this.
If I can just come back on that, obviously all our personnel are all trained. We carry out all the training that we need to and all the updates that we need to. And you're quite right, we have significantly cut down the amount of glyphosate that we use. I think initially when we came in 2016, I think it was about 1,500, and now we're down to 600 litres. So it's a significant reduction in that. To be honest, it does say that it's safe. It's, we go to the amenity forum that we go to, we are associated members of that, and they do say that it is safe in what we're using. I know there's been some lawsuit that's in America particularly, but that was more on an agricultural sort of field, and they were using vast quantities of that. I don't know if you want anything to say there, Samantha?
Yeah, I would just like to say using glyphosate and Roundup Pro Vantage, which we use, has a clean label, and it is safe to use, and it doesn't harm animals or people when used. And when sprayed onto the plant, it goes into the soil and dissipates within hours, and then is released out into the soil as nitrogen or carbon dioxide. So from our point of view currently, it is safe to use. The EU, it's under review, and that review will end in December 2022. And there is, we're always striving to use the correct plant protection products, which are sustainable, and we can use them. They're affordable, and they are good for the, not necessarily good for the environment, but good at combating weeds, which unfortunately on hard surfaces there is no alternative currently. And the research that I've read and I've heard from Bayer, who manufacture Roundup, they're putting billions into research, and the science is what we in Safer, Cleaner, Greener would like to look at, the science and the evidence, rather than any I couldn't comment on any of the legal ramifications, but we are all set as part of the amenity forum. We are an associate member, so we are at the forefront now of contributing to the review of the national action. And that will be updated sometime next year, and I'm more than happy to update councillors to the each stage if they require. But I would like to see the review extended, as Councillor Crest has said, and I'd like to see it extended, the cease of use until this national action plan has been, which is it's been led by central government. I'd like to kind of keep the review timetable when this has been published and agreed with government and the relevant experts in this area of using glyphosate, which will be before the December 22 deadline of the renewal of the active ingredient glyphosate. Thank you. Okay.
Right. Thank you, Samantha. We've got. So I can hear feedback. This is putting me off. We've got quite a few councillors who want to come in, and I'm just looking at time's moving on. If we could keep our points as succinct as possible, that would really be appreciated. And what I'll do is to mitigate the time worries, I'll bring in Councillor Brian Smith, and then I'll also bring in Councillor Caffrey after Brian, just to try and move things on quickly. So Brian, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I have 3 questions actually. Could you inform us what's the additional cost incurred since the Cabinet decision on the 29th of July? Secondly, how long have the council been using this particular glyphosate, if that's the correct pronunciation? And on consultation on 3.1, you mentioned that you've approached other partners like Together Housing, Canal and River Trust, etc., and they've given no response. Is there any particular reason you think that they might have not given that response? Is it because of cost? Is it because they're quite happy to carry on with that? So those are the 3 questions at the moment. I'm concerned about the additional costs that have been incurred, given our budgets and given the cuts that have been mentioned in Cabinet on the 1st of July, which I was totally against. I won't go into detail, but basically, when we're talking about cutting budgets, we've got to make sure that it's evenly spread. So I'd just like an answer to those 3 questions, please, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. And then Councillor Caffrey, over to you. You're on mute.
I can't remember why we first banned this. I remember it was full council on it. I don't know that it was a scientific based thing or a personal thing. But I mean, let's be honest, our farmers use this, so we're eating it anyway. I think in the dilute form, it's probably harmless. Roundup, which is sold openly, is far more dangerous because it's full of chemicals. This is full of chemicals. And I mean, you know, if somebody's daft enough to drink it, well, you know, that's up to them. But really, I don't see that we've got any scientific evidence for the risks. I mean, it works. I mean, I recognise it's balancing costs against perceived risk, but the perceived risk hasn't been made clear. I mean, I've been following the Bayer case, actually, and the jury's still out on whether this stuff is dangerous or not. So I think, you know, in view of the cost, you know, the cost it's incurring to the council, I don't know why would you just start using it again? Thanks. Cheers.
Yeah, and so officers, would you like to respond to that? And I'm really interested in this cost element too. How much is this half and half model actually costing us? I think Andrew might have said £250,000, but Andrew, would you, or Amanda, would you like to respond?
Yeah, just on that, when we'd said actually on the soft landscape, with what we've put in there with the suppressant with the emulsion, things like that, the costs really haven't been that significant as such. The cartoon gold, I think, is about 27 times more expensive. I'm honest on that. I think we're managing the soft landscape as well as we possibly can. The problem will be it's when it goes on the hard landscape, and we've looked at all into alternatives such as the foam wash, the flames, hot wash and everything like that. So that is when we'll have to have the cost of the machinery and also cost of operatives, because it is so time consuming and so very expensive for the machinery.
Right, fantastic. Thank you, Amanda. I'll bring in Brian Smith because I think he's got, Councillor Smith, he's got an additional question.
Sorry about that, Chair. My additional question actually is how many of the hard areas have not been treated this year in order to save costs and various other things? In Appendix 2, it showed you a number of pictures where heart surfaces had not been treated, and some that had been treated with a cost identified against them. So, is there any of those heart surfaces not being treated in order to save costs? Along with, as I say, could you identify how much it's cost us additionally since the 29th of July?
Additionally, as well, on this point, could I ask, are Safer Cleaner team currently on a spending freeze as well? That's in addition to Councillor Smith's question.
Okay. Sam, do you want to go back? Because I know you did the actual appendix for all the work there for the grounds sort of side of it.
Yeah, sure. The pictures and the appendices was just to show because the option which was approved was to cease all use of glyphosate within parks and open spaces. So this was an example of what's been happening over the last 8, 9, 10 months in parks, and the impact that the parks are having on the non-use of chemical to treat weeds on both hard and soft surfaces. If councillors need to revise the use of glyphosate within parks, because we do have many health and safety issues, which Andrew noted at the beginning around play area safety surfacing. There's no alternative for the removal of those weeds, and like for like in a park, when you're going from the swings to the tennis to the bowling, the hard landscape which links these areas are becoming quite weedy. And I haven't worked out the cost implications. We just did this on the recommendation that the option 2 was approved to cease all glyphosate use across parks. I hope that's okay.
Just on that as well, we do actually have a route that we go through for the hard landscape and everything there. We continue through the route, so we haven't stopped doing anything. We're just working our way on the route for the hard landscape, certainly on that. You asked how long we actually used glyphosate. I would say at least 7 years that I'm aware of. So we've used it for that long. You also asked regarding the Together Housing and Canal and River Trust. I have actually had a response from Together Housing, and they have actively reduced and are still actively reducing the amount of glyphosate they use. But they've acknowledged there is no alternative out there either. So they do want to continue to do that. I haven't had anything back from the Canal and River Trust in response.
Okay, thank you.
All right, fantastic. So I'll take Councillor Holdsworth and Councillor Kavanagh together, if that's okay. Can everybody still hear me?
I can hear you.
Fantastic.
Yes,
thank you.
I can hear you.
I think we're having some technical issues, but Councillor Holdsworth, over to you.
Hi, no, my question's been answered because I wanted to ask what the response had been from Together Housing and the Canal and River Trust, and that's been covered, so thank you. So I'll allow, I'm finished, thank you.
Fantastic, thank you, Councillor Holdsworth. Councillor Kavanagh.
I wanted to say that it's obviously great that we've reduced it by massive amounts. But I'm just wondering what work we're going to do, or we've already done, which is around taking the public along around their perceptions. So obviously, when it's a safety issue or an invasive species, then obviously we've got to deal with it. But outside of that, so for example, on soft landscaping, where we're in a totally different era now, people don't expect to have these kind of planted, neat things to look at. People are really keen to see meadows, wildflowers. When we look at the implications of what happens when things leach into the topsoil, how that relates to the biodiversity of the area, it's absolutely really key at the moment. And when I understand when we talk about cost, we talk about council budget, but dealing with climate change and promoting biodiversity is expensive, and that's just the way it is. But it's absolutely essential for us going forward. So just wanted to know what we're planning to do in terms of taking Calderdale along to say, look, you're not going to have these neat verges any longer, and we don't really need them.
Yeah, just on that, we're obviously trying to get as much natural landscape as we can. So we're keeping the grass longer under tree belts and things like that. We've reduced or increased the height of the cut. So we're cutting at a lot higher level now. So we're not doing as many cuts, if you like. So we've reduced the number of cuts. With the wildflowers, obviously we've increased the number of wildflowers with the corridors of colour and things like that. So we are actively trying to increase the natural landscape out there.
Fantastic, thank you, Amanda. Councillor Fenton Glen.
Hi, yeah, so it's just a quick one. As I've said before, I think it's welcome that we are taking this seriously. I'm also aware that dangerous chemicals being used on weeds is not an exclusively problems that we have, is that a lot of people use their gardens in various forms and have less training and probably use them in a less sensible way. I had a constituent recently who got in touch with me because they were cleaning out their dad's house, and they'd found who kind of fairly old-fashioned chemical weed killer, and were asking how to get rid of it because they had a slightly more enlightened view of the best ways to kill weeds in your garden. Now I happen to know, because I followed that up and spoke to the officers, that you can get rid of that kind of weed killer at Calderdale tips. I'm just wondering if we've looked into education and kind of information to let people know that they can dispose of those chemicals, and that we would recommend that they did for the purposes of biodiversity, and what we're doing to kind of push down household use of damaging chemicals.
I'll be honest, we haven't put anything out there regarding that, of how you dispose of anything. I mean, it is something we can certainly look at and just move that forward, but it's not something we've done currently.
Right, okay. Do we have any proposals, any recommendations at all? Councillor Audrey Smith.
I just have a question about a lot of the space has changed, and we've got a lot more sort of we've got a lot more tree plantations and bushes and shrubs to encourage biodiversity. Can we think about ways of reducing the amount of hard space that we hard surfaces that we have, so we've got less to actually go and kill weeds on? Like, for example, I'm just looking at some of the pictures and I think, well, some of those paths could maybe be sort of turned into something else so that we wouldn't have to have the problem. I mean, if moss naturally grows on a path that's not used very much, then maybe it should not be a path anymore. I just wondered about reducing the amount of area that we'd have to cover, that's all.
Yeah, no, I do take your point on that. It's probably down to resources and actually what we've got currently with the manpower that we've actually got. But longer term, then we can certainly do that. If it is something we can look at, we will certainly look and see what we can do for that.
Right, Councillor Young, I believe you got a recommendation. Wherever you are.
Thank you, George.
Yeah.
My recommendation would be to note the report, to welcome the reduction of the use of weed killer over the last 4 years, and for the officers to continue looking at alternatives to glyphosate.
Right, thank you, Councillor Young. Do we have a seconder? I think Councillor Fenton Glynn put his hand up there. Right, we've got a proposal. Do we have any amendments? No, no amendments. Right, okay. All those in favour, please show your hands. Yeah. All those against? Right, there we go. So we've got, I'm going to need to call those out, aren't I? Well, it's carried. Kirsty, do we need the actual voters for? No?
No.
No, okay.
Majority carries it.
Perfect, right, majority carried. Right, well, thank you, officers, for coming. Greatly appreciated. Go and enjoy your evening, and thank you for your continued hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, on to the next. Kirsty, next one in. Dear me. Packed agenda tonight. Right.
Fiona's just joining, Chair.
Right, perfect. Welcome, Fiona, when you're in.
Isn't this a wonderful system?
Right, Fiona, fantastic, welcome. Fiona, over to you.
Hello, Chair. Sorry, I couldn't get my mute off. Thank you. So you've had a report from me, which is an update really on all the various funding that we've been looking to secure across the towns. And I've tried to summarise it to give you an overview, because they are different funding sources for each of the towns that we've got. So starting with the Future High Street activity, we've got the Future High Street bid for Halifax that went in yesterday. So we're on the full business case has been submitted now. It's £18 million that's been submitted for the Halifax scheme. And we should hear in October if we've been successful with that. An activity should start from January of 2021, which will be great news if we get that through. We've got the Elland High Street bid, which is it's coming in at round about 8.4 million currently with the costings. We're hoping to get that nearer 8 million so that we've got more of a chance of getting it through. But ultimately that will be submitted in July. And it's generally around about a month behind the Halifax one. So we should get notification if we submit in July for November. And again, we're looking at round about a February 2021 start on spend for that particular funding stream. Within Sowerby Bridge, it's more positive. It's looking as though we've secured that funding, which is 1.9 million. We're still waiting for the final confirmation from Historic England with that funding stream, and we hope to have that very soon. And that will mean that we can start activity within Sowerby Bridge once we've got all the confirmation through from August this year, which is great news if everything gets signed off. And then your two main funding areas, which are a little bit behind everything else, are the two large schemes, which are for Todmorden and for Brighouse. And those come through the Towns Deals Fund. And there's potentially up to £25 million for each of those towns. And we're looking towards an October submission
for their delivery plans. So there is work still underway to try and understand exactly what we can include in those. Further guidance is due out in the next couple of weeks to give us a little bit more clarification as to what sort of activity we can include. So far, we've given them a bit of a long list from each of the towns as to what the towns boards and the local consultation would like to see in those activities. But until the guidance comes out, we can't really firm up between the capital and the revenue activity to understand how that 25 million could be made up. But hopefully with the new guidance, that will get clearer. And then of course that will help with the delivery plan submissions by October. So overall, there's quite a range of potential investment coming to our towns. It is extremely timely, considering the state we're in at the moment with COVID-19 and the potential impact on the economy and on our places. So we are hopeful that, you know, we will get this funding through in a timely manner that can help with some of the recovery planning for COVID-19. It has been very difficult in doing the consultation processes as in-depthly as we would have loved to have done. You may have seen some of the activity for Elland. We did a digital consultation, as well as we did have opportunity for people to contact officers with their thoughts and wishes. But we've not been able to do as much stakeholder one-to-one type of activity and as much sort of door knocking with local residents as we would have liked because of the COVID-19 situation. With potential unlocking and the way things might move, we will have transitional phases within all the bids because most of the costings are concept stage. So once we've secured the funding, then we can do more robust consultation with each of the townships. From a governance point of view, we've tried to be consistent and use the town boards as being the main sort of vehicle to try and understand what each place would like to see within the funding envelopes that we've bid for. And wherever possible, we've tried to ensure that the different stakeholder networks that the town boards use have also been part of the consultation process. And wherever possible, we've also used the business networks that were created following the floods of 2015. And they themselves have been able to contribute and also give some sort of depth of flavour about the economic aspects as well as the people aspects for local residents that are actually in those places. We have been successful in appointing our new town centre manager, which I am overjoyed for because it's been a bit tricky trying to do this in the day job at the moment. It's been a very taxing time, as I'm sure you can all appreciate, with all the various stuff that goes on in my area of work. And I'm so pleased to announce that we've got a lady starting, Karen Horton, next Thursday. And she's got a vast range of experience within capital and revenue investment within towns. She's an architect by trade, so she does have an eye for detail. But she's also been heavily involved within future high street bids within other localities, which is good. And I'm very pleased to say that she lives in Sowerby Bridge. So we've also got a local person, which is wonderful. So going forward, really, it's more the support in any way that we can get from any of our councillors in spreading the word about the potential of the investment. And then as we launch more of the concept into design consultation, that's when it's going to be critical, where we really start to home in on not missing any opportunity of how we stretch this funding as wide as we can. I've tried to demonstrate that a lot of this funding is trying to bring streams of money together, and it's trying to put packages into places so that those packages of support do connect with each other. So whether or not we've had transport funding money, we've incorporated that as co-funding so that the place has a package of support, and wherever possible, it's all interconnected with the timing of the delivery and ensuring that over the 4-year period, which is the bulk of the time to deliver most of this funding, we're trying to do the investment in that window so that it's not prolonged for people. It's the first stage, and we try and put that whole package together. And wherever possible, we can then build on top of that any other revenue opportunities that might come from different funding streams that we come across. So for example, with Sowerby Bridge, it's primarily Historic England that are funding some of the capital investment, but then that's been matched and mirrored with the Transport Fund. So the cycling and greenways and the changes that we're going to be doing there can complement with some of the work that we're doing with the Sowerby Bridge scheme. And then that will hopefully open up event opportunities, festivals when we can have them again, and start to look at the fact that Historic England will have a revenue pot for us to bid in. They've not declared when that's going to come yet, but they have announced that that will be the second stage of investment, which will be great because then we can have another package of support to support Sowerby Bridge. So hopefully you've found it useful in just giving a bit of an overview summary of the different streams. We are hopeful that by the end of March, we will have had decisions on all the funding streams. So at least it will help with understanding the medium to long-term recovery plans for COVID-19, because we would have a clarity on what funding packages do we have for our towns. The unfortunate area at this moment in time is that Hebden Bridge primarily has got its flood resilience package sorted, but we don't have a sort of regeneration or place package for Hebden Bridge currently at the moment. So that's the area that hopefully now we've got the new manager starting, we'd like them to focus in on what other opportunities may we have with other funding streams, because currently Hebden Bridge isn't actually identified as an area within these existing funding pots. So it is on our radar, it's just at the moment, it's trying to source what funding might be out there. And we may find, because of COVID-19, that other recovery pots of money become apparent, and then we could try and target that for Hebden Bridge to make sure that they're not seen as missing out. And also we've got other towns like Mythe and Royd, and also other areas of North Halifax and within West Central Halifax that again are not necessarily benefiting directly from this investment, but this is probably our first phase of trying to get our main towns some investment wherever possible.
Fantastic, thank you, Fiona. And of course, it is incredibly prevalent given what's happened into the high street at the moment and the effect of COVID. Councillor Scullion, do you want to come in at any point, or are you content?
Thank you, Chair. I think Fiona's covered it pretty comprehensively.
Perfect, thank you. Right, members, so we've got Councillor Young and then Councillor Fenton-Glynn. Councillor Young, so, apologies, you're on mute. Fantastic, there we go.
Right. Thank you, Chair. I welcome this report, and I've moved to note the report and ask for a report back in 6 to 9 months' time when there'll be further progression.
Right, well, I'll second that, but we've got Councillor Fenton-Glynn and Councillor Kavanagh.
Hi, I think this is really useful. I think particularly I'd just like to kind of drill down into what we have done and what stage we're at with the Todmorden and Brighouse projects. So just to be clear, have the government actually produced the full guidance as to what we can apply for? Have they just said that there's 25 million? And do we know that, I mean, I remember announcements that those towns were going to receive that funding. Does that remain the case? Are we confident that we will receive the funding if we can demonstrate our ability to spend it, or is there still a chance that we might not get the funding? We've just been given the right to apply.
Okay.
So as far as the guidance, we have not got the detailed guidance for the delivery plan. We were expecting that this week. We think it's going to be next week. But we have been informed it is imminently due because they are expecting us to get the delivery plans in by October. And they have indicated it will be Green Book appraised, very similar to what we've done for the Future High Street Fund. So we do know that we are going to need several months in order to put our plans together, because the detail that goes into Green Book appraisal is extremely robust. So we are expecting it very shortly. As far as the 25 million allocation, depending on what you read, in some cases it says it's a competitive process, and in other it's saying that there may be scope to grow from 25 million. So I think until we see the guidance and the clarity behind that, it's very difficult to confirm whether or not this is a guarantee or not.
Is there a guarantee that we will receive some funding, sorry, for those two towns?
It's certainly been implied that we have got the opportunity to bid for the money. I've not read anything that guarantees that we will definitely get something for each town.
So the towns have been invited to bid, but it's not been confirmed, so it's on the basis of that bid. Do you mind if I ask, sorry, just kind of trying to think about this, how much do we spend, and if you don't have the numbers, I appreciate that, kind of on these competitive tenders every year? I'm just thinking about the use of local government finance, you know, what kind of budget do we set aside for it?
We don't set aside a budget at all. What we have at the moment, the Future High Street Fund bid has been put together because we got the funding up front to do the development. In relation to the Townsdeal funding, again, we've been given funding up front in order to get to the delivery plan stage. So it's very rare that we have a specific resource from within the council's own pot in order to do bids of this scale.
Right, fantastic. I'll go over to Councillor Kavanagh, and then Councillor Fentingland, if you want to come back on any of those points, you feel free to do so. Councillor Kavanagh.
I think this is really exciting. Finally, a bit of excitement. And it's great to hear. I know you've said you've consulted through the town boards and there were stakeholder groups in there. So this might have already happened. So it's either a question or a comment, but just thinking about the potential of really consulting with certain stakeholders to make sure we get it right. So I'm thinking in particular disability groups. So, you know, thinking through, this is a real opportunity, isn't it, to make our towns as accessible as possible. And as we know, when we make a town really accessible, it usually benefits a much wider group of people. So that was, I suppose, a comment question. And then just thinking through, you know, places like Utrecht. I know Utrecht is a much bigger city compared to our towns, but they've totally made the whole place wheelchair accessible, which brings money into the economy. And my other question was around what the next kind of consultation looks like. So I know you've said it's been curtailed because of COVID. So I know that some of them have happened and the money's you're at the next stage, but for the next consultation, what does it look like during this current period? Does that make sense, my question?
Yep, okay. So with regards to consultation, because all of the schemes are interconnected so far, so the Elland, Halifax and Sowerby Bridge schemes have all been interconnected with the Transport Fund. Through the Transport Fund master planning, all of those stakeholder groups have also been consulted in relation to the Future High Street Fund and the Historic England Fund. So part of the consultation process for doing the town's activity is that we've incorporated all those stakeholders. as part of that master planning. So this has not happened just for the funding for this particular thing. It's been a phased approach of consultation right the way back from when the first lot of master planning. So for example, Sowerby Bridge's master planning started 3 years ago. And then we've incorporated the same stakeholder groups throughout that transition. The problem we've had is for Sowerby Bridge, it was easier because it happened pre-COVID, and a lot of that has been done in the group sessions, one-to-one sessions, more of the traditional consultation. The one for Halifax and Elland, the one, Halifax in particular, has been more of a struggle. And of course, we've started that journey with Elland. And of course, we've been in the heart of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we have had various groups with regards to disability that have been incorporated in that consultation. And in some cases, those have been done on a one-to-one telephone conversation because of accessibility, so people could give their thoughts. And also we've got various groups, certainly in Elland, who are a practical support to our transport team at the moment, actually showing what needs to be improved and giving their advice and guidance. And 2 of those individuals are wheelchair users. So hopefully at this early stage for concept, we've tried our best. I'm sure from Todmorden and Brighouse's point of view, there will be a lot more in-depth consultation required because it is a lot broader and it's a lot more money that's available for those 2 townships. So it's understanding really how we ensure that all those stakeholders that do have a voice have got an opportunity to share their thinking. So we are mindful that as we move from concept into design, we do need that intensive consultation.
Right, fantastic. Are there any more questions at all? No. Right, well, we've got a proposal from Councillor Young, but I think it's pretty superfluous to propose to move when we're at the end of the discussion. However, I did know, Councillor Young, that you mentioned that you wanted another report in October or September. Is that what you said, Councillor Young?
You're on mute, Councillor Young.
Said in 6 months, he's just muted himself by accident.
7 months. Yeah, I think we can discuss that under work plan.
I was going to say, given that we're about to go onto the work plan and we've got specific things about high streets and nighttime economy, and that might be a good place to talk about when we can return to this. But I think I'll see this again.
That's a good suggestion. And thank you, Fiona, for. I know it's always difficult when you're the last one on the agenda, but thank you for hanging in there, and thanks for everything you do as well. I think there's a lot of progress, a lot of change that is happening at the moment in terms of the high streets, and it's exciting stuff. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so we are now on the work plan item. Now, other members, so Councillor Scullion, you're more than welcome to stay. She's gone. And then same applies to Councillor Press. Work plan. Okay, over to you, Alex.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, we basically have 2 aspects to the work planning item tonight. The first one being the work planning document itself, and then the second one being the document I circulated earlier this morning that was being compiled by Councillor Robinson and Councillor Fenton Glynn. I'll give a brief overview of the work plan document first, and then I'll hand over to Councillor Robinson, Councillor Fenton Glynn, and possibly Mike as well. So regarding the work plan itself, it's customary around this time that the scrutiny officers, along with the chair, will meet with the directors and officers from the relevant areas and discuss priorities and possible streams of work coming up in the year ahead. And that has taken place with Zora and Mark Cole. And the work plan we have at the moment is a result of those discussions, along with discussions that we've had as a board in a formal and informal setting, and discussions that Councillor Robertson and Councillor Fenton Glynn have had as well. And some of these items you may be familiar with from the end of year report that we presented as well, and that's been drawn inspiration from there as well. As you'd expect, some of the items are sort of business as usual kind of stuff. Some of it is sort of longer term COVID items, but I will leave that to Councillor Robertson, Councillor Fenton Glynn when we come to that, to go into a bit more depth about how the board may wish to go ahead and approach the topic of COVID. I'll just point out a couple of main features on the work plan. So first of all, items that were proposed for next month so far is an item on the new normal. So a briefing hopefully from Zora and Mark, because discussions are ongoing there, for the COVID implications in regeneration strategy and public services. We then also have the parking strategy with a particular focus on parking charges and devolution as well, which in the background of everything that's going on with COVID is an equally important bit of work. And what we're hoping to do there is focusing on the bits that have particular interests in the remit of place, including transport, infrastructure and economy. I'll also point out as well that you may have noticed we have themed meetings, or a meeting there that's down as a themed meeting in August. Again, I'll leave Councillor Robinson, Councillor Fenton Glynn to build on this a bit more. But this is something that we're looking at in order to cover some broader topics that have arisen from COVID, and a way to approach these more complex topics in a single meeting through a range of items in that one session. But again, I'll pass that on in a second. Yeah, so I believe that's all from me. I'll hand it over. I'll just remind you that the work plan is yours. You know, if there's any suggestions or questions or anything you'd like to see on there, definitely welcome some kind of discussion or debate about if there's anything missing or if there's anything that could be built upon, any ideas. But that's all from me for now, and I'll pass on to Councillor Robertson, Councillor Fenton Glynn.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Greatly appreciated. I just want to note at this stage that Alex does so much work on this. He's putting in a lot of hours at the moment, and I just wanted to note that it's important to appreciate that. Yeah, I don't want to spend too long, but first of all, themed meetings, I think is a cracking idea. I really do. Main reason is because sometimes our topics can be a bit all over the place. It can be a bit difficult to follow on. And if you've got a themed meeting, say if you're doing Green August, which is what one of them that we're suggesting, you know, Economic September, Waste and Recycling October, Third Sector November, it allows you to question, say, the second item from the first. It allows you to build on the discussion. And I think it's a good suggestion in terms of that. The COVID change stuff, over the past few months, we've been in lockdown. A lot has happened. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, you know, like I don't really want online meetings all the time, if I'm honest with you. But then there's some good elements to that. You know, we can actually finally have a full-time counsellor who's also a parent, because they can actually work online. So I think it's important that we review some of the elements of what's happened recently. You know, for example, fly tipping, online council meetings, real estate. Registrars are a really interesting one. The laws change, which allows you to register a death online, and a lot of people find that mentally better. It's better for the mental well-being because it's not stressful. So a lot's changed. So if we can incorporate COVID-related subjects into the work plan, I think that's a really exciting thing. Finally, December meeting, I suggested Christmas December. I think it's a great idea. You know, Christmas jumpers aren't mandatory, but it's frowned upon if you don't wear them. And I'd like to recommend that we, I think it'd be a great idea. Hopefully we're out of lockdown, I'm sure it will be, to have that meeting in an external location. I think that would be really interesting. You know, we could have it in the Peace Hall, we could have it in the theatre. I think that would be a really interesting concept, and it would kind of sign the year off in quite a nice way. So I'm interested for your thoughts on that one. Right, over to Josh, Mike, or members. Josh?
Yeah, no, sorry. I mean, the main thing I was going to say is, like, this is not an exhaustive document. It was a look at some of the things that should be coming up and trying to. The meeting I always remember is when we spent 2 hours talking about trees in Todmorden Town Hall, and then got to discuss about the Todmorden economy after all the people from Todmorden had left. And I don't want to do that again. Because I think actually when it comes down to it, like, having themed meetings allows us to say things which are relevant to members of the public who might want to engage with the work that we're doing, and makes us more relevant and interesting and useful to them. It's not exhaustive. There's a couple of things, you know, that I think it is important for us to discuss. We need to look at the nighttime economy. We need to look at how we're going to come out of Brexit, and you know, what's going to happen at the end of this year, and whether Calderdale as an authority is ready. And you know, we need to look at the future of the nighttime economy, but also the future of leisure in our area. We had a discussion today of the leisure centre, but actually that's part of a broader conversation about, you know, if and when leisure centres do reopen, what are they going to look like? And, you know, also how we're going to make use of the fact that quite a lot of people have got used to doing one piece of exercise a day, and how do we build on that, some of our active Calderdale agenda. So yeah, there's quite a few things which I think would be really good to discuss. And yeah, I hope that people support that. I'm happy to take on board other things that people think are worthwhile that we might have missed out.
Very good point, Josh. I really do invite members, if you've got anything you want to review, now's the time to say it, so we can take it back, we can flesh out the brief, and we can get it on the plan. So now's the time. Mike, do you want to contribute anything? And I'll take Councillor Kavanagh.
I'm happy to wait till councillors have had a chance to comment, Chair.
Perfect. Right, Councillor Kavanagh.
So I'm trying to work out how this would fit into place, and I don't exactly know that. But what I would like to look at is there are really certain groups that have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. BME, the BME population, women, and also people from poorer backgrounds. Now, I know that's quite wide in terms of how they've been impacted, and I'm trying to that's the bit I'm trying to work out in how it relates to place. But at the moment, we're focusing on things a lot like the high street and the economy, but I'd like to specifically look at the disproportionate impacts on certain groups.
What I'll do, Councillor Kavanagh, I'll bring Mike in at the end just to answer that one, and I'll get, whilst we're in the brainstorming part, obviously you've got the suggestion about minorities. I'll bring in Mike at the end. Does anyone else have any suggestions?
Just to say, women are not a minority. We're 56% of the global population.
Well, no, I didn't realise you said minorities. I thought it said.
And we give birth to the other 46%. So just.
I thought you said black ethnic minorities. I didn't realise you incorporated women in that definition.
Don't worry, George.
Any other
into that one?
Any other members? Do you have any other ideas? Councillor Kavanagh, is that a hand? No. No. Right, good. Mike, over to you.
I mean, I guess to pick up on Councillor Kavanagh's point, I mean, one of the things that myself and Alex and Lauren in our team will have to do is to make sure that we haven't got three of the scrutiny boards looking at the same thing. And I don't know if members are aware, but between probably right now there's an online seminar with Owen Williams from the CHFT, from the Hospital Trust, and the chair, I think, of the Council for Mosques, and a couple of other people talking about the impact of COVID on Black and ethnic minority communities from a health point of view. But it might well be that you as a board wanted to look at the impact on minorities and women and other groups from say an economic and employment perspective, so that actually we will do some work on coordinating, but make sure that we haven't got two boards doing exactly the same task. The other thing I think that the document that Councillor Robinson and Councillor Fenton Glynn have put together is a really useful sort of plan for how we're going to manage the work of the Scrutiny Board over the year. I think I would add, which is in there, is the benefit of the sort of the short, sharp review. We've started referring to it as scrutiny in a day. Anybody who watched the cabinet meeting on Monday will have heard how well received the report on the youth service was by cabinet that the CYP board did. Now, to be honest, it's a little bit you wonders whether they received it well because they agreed with it rather than the approach it took. And Scrutiny Board reviews shouldn't necessarily be what cabinet wants to hear. Sometimes they won't be, but it was a fairly tightly sort of managed piece of work with actually not scrutiny in a day, but scrutiny in a half day from 3 o'clock till 7:30 or 8 o'clock. And I think that I think it was Councillor Kavanagh originally talked about the nighttime economy, but as an example, getting witnesses from from the Peace Hall, from the Square Chapel, from the bars, and from the council to feed into that could be a really interesting piece of work. The other comment I'd make is that when we met with Zora and Mark Cole, is it Cole or Coles? I'm not sure. Mark Cole said there are things that we can learn from this current experience, but if we wait till 2021, we'll probably go back to our old ways of doing things. So actually, what's become the new normal is well worth looking at in some bite-sized chunks, I would suggest, over the autumn. And I think you can make a really good contribution into how the place is in the future. That's it.
Right. Do we have any other comments? Councillor Audrey Smith.
Out of all of the topics, sorry, Mike, it's really going back to the first bit, but waste management and fly tipping, I would love us to just have a bit of a chat about it in terms of what could be done to improve recycling and reduce fly tipping. It's something that I've got a lot of opinions about, and I just think, would this be the place where you would be able to sort of put forward ideas, or is this the place where you scrutinise what's already been presented to you?
No, Councillor, it's a very good suggestion. Indeed, in the Constitution, policy development is a key role and a key function of scrutiny. So it's a good idea. And indeed, sometimes I have wondered whether our officers who are collecting fly tipping, whether at that point of collection, they should actually be ascertaining evidence. That's something that I've always wondered. Because sometimes we so quickly want to get it away that we forget that actually sometimes enforcement action needs to be taken. So I think that's a very good suggestion. Mike, did you put your hand up then?
Well, actually, to be honest, Chair, it's just to agree that both those things are your role as a board, to scrutinise things and to make suggestions and proposals for the way things could be done different in the future. So, absolutely, Councillor Smith.
Perfect. Are there any other hands in the air? No. Right, good. Well, we'll take those away, and then we'll put them into an amended document, and we'll come up with something. So thank you. In that case, meeting is over. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and keep safe.